Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Beyond the Steps. This is a show where we chat with guest experts every single week to break down one question from a wide range of issues affecting performance athletes, anything from racism to gender inequities, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, and science. We've got it all. I'm Bree Zabrowski, co founder and CEO of Apollo Performance Wear, here with my co host, friend, entrepreneur, dance educator, and social justice advocate, Melissa McDaniel Grisham of Turning Point Dance Creations. Melissa, happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
We're here for another fantastic conversation, and we're capping off our guest series today with the incomparable Aisha Upchurch. We're talking about remixing studio culture. How can hip hop programs enrich dance education? If you missed the first two episodes in this series, please make sure you go back and or the first episode, I should say, of this series. Please make sure and go back and listen. Melissa, for our friends just tuning in, tell us more about Aisha.
Aisha Upchurch is an entrepreneur, artist, educator, and consultant who creates, facilitates, and designs for radical change. She's a seed planter, soil agitator, and weaves her passion into her commitment as a critical arts, pedagogy, youth advocacy, social justice, and transformative education. Radical change means shaking up the old, expanding the boundaries of what's possible, and centering joy in the process. That's the key, centering joy in the process so you can keep going. Whether on the stage or in the classroom or the boardroom, Aisha quite literally on the move shows what it means to be dope, dismantling oppression, pushing education. And Isha is a fave of ours, has been back many times. Happy to have her here. And thank you so much for being with us today, Isha.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me back. I mean, until y'all sick of me, prepare to be sick of me.
Nope, nope, can't
Not
happen.
happening.
Thank you. I'm glad to be in conversation with you all today.
Yeah. So, Aisha, what like before we get started, what are you seeing in the hip hop community, as in the hip hop dance community? Are you seeing some evolution in people embracing the education behind it all? Are you seeing any trends or any shifts that are happening this year?
Well, I mean, first of all, that's a very, very large
Yeah. Some
community.
in summary, I guess.
Yeah, and this is a year where we in the larger hip hop community are celebrating and commemorating 50 years. So we know that the culture and all that feeds it started before the date that's being recognized. It is nice that I think in different circles, in education circles, in conferences, in academia, in community circles, that I mean, we see it on award shows that it's really nice to have people pause and go, wow, 50 years of hip hop culture. And I think that really, really founds and grounds anything that I might be able to offer in terms of what's happening is right now the world has enjoying a moment to think about what in the past 50 years hip hop has touched when people didn't think that it was going to be anything beyond this passing trend.
Mm-hmm.
See that like for something to exist for 50 plus years, it has a genesis, it has a rhyme and a reason, and it has something pretty potent and powerful to it. And so the avenues are ripe in education and what that looks like in community spaces, in quote unquote formal education spaces, in conversations. There's a lot popping off right now. And I think in the dance umbrella of that community, I continue to feel affirmed by meeting and joining and learning a lot from folks who've really dedicated themselves to tracking that history and being storytellers to help make sure people understand here's what happened in the first 50 and there's so much space to keep growing.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about what it means to have a studio culture of any kind, really. We often hear about toxic cultures, healthy cultures, competitive cultures, but overall, what does having a studio culture mean to you?
Whew. Well, I guess if we get to put on our aspirational lens, one, because I think all of those kind of headings that you offered are definitely experiences and charges around studio cultures that I've experienced, from the benevolent to the kind of superficially inclusive to the more intentionally inclusive to low-key toxic, but don't nobody know because everybody's drinking the toxic water. So to kind of like freedom dream a bit around what does studio culture mean to me, and as a reflection of what I try to bring to any space. I think any learning space, whether that's a dance studio, a college classroom, a PD session with adult learners or staff. I think any of those spaces, there's a ripe opportunity, of course, like as Melissa shared in the bio, to center joy. And so studio cultures can be joy centered, and that requires honesty to admit what you know, what you don't know. And I think a beautiful studio culture would be one where folks are intentional around being honest with students and staff around here's what we know, what we're offering, here's some blind spots, here's an intentional and strategic plan to address those blind spots versus just kind of fill them in with something. And so I think there's room for studio culture to be more honest. And in that, I think it really will open up more avenues for folks to experience the joy in their learning of the craft, but also appreciating that they are literally buying into, investing into, funding a space that has their well-being considered and not just like transactional. Oh, this thing is cool. You'll pay $50,000 for it. We'll take your money. So I think there's room right now, and in light of the conversations that you all are throwing out there, there's room for us to have more honest studio cultures.
So that's a great segue into the next question, which is, how do you suggest someone begin to even assess what their studio culture is if they're out there listening and thinking, I don't know what my studio culture is. I have no idea. And coming from a very honest place, where do they even begin?
I think any type of audit of where am I, what am I doing? Some folks you have to be willing to actually have an honest conversation with yourself, right? Like if I ran a studio and it reflected my interests and my quote unquote expertise, I have to have an honest conversation with self if I were leading that studio and go, have I been telling people that my dance studio offers everything? Or is the actual truth that I've been selective around what I offer? And whatever the answer to that is, can you sit with like, okay, actually, I haven't been offering everything. And I'm going to give myself and this organization permission to then be intentionally selective around what we offer to make sure that we have educators our teaching staff, our teaching artists, that their knowledge and development is being nurtured so that this specific thing that we're offering, we're doing it at our best level. And if you are being more broad, like, well, actually, we do cover a lot. Sitting with your dance instructors, sitting with yourself and going, do I know? Do I think I have some awareness of what my dance teachers know and are doing?
Yeah, because I feel like often in dance, like we'll see people create environments based on what they think everybody wants or what they know. They'll just take what they know and kind of, spin that off or regurgitate that instead of really going, does this accurately and authentically represent
what we do,
who I am, where I want to go, and what I want to, put out to the world, right? So authenticity probably too.
Yeah, I just mean like if I want to have a percussive dance studio, but I labeled my studio, all dances happen here, right? So people won't have a frame, but then they realize, oh, you just have tap, flamenco, clog-in, step. I might want to go, you know what? I had an intention, but in practice, I really should call it all stepping or all, noisy soul noise or whatever, because really I have a focus on this. And so folks can just, without judgment, right?
Right.
Ask yourself, like, what's on the table actually?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is key. And there's so many times where I walk into studios or I meet studios, I know of studios, and they're like, yes, we are nurturing and diverse, and we have all these wonderful things, and we're just kind to each other. You walk in, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a cat fight. Like, what in the world? What? Like, I haven't even been here 5 minutes, and this is
Yeah.
nothing like what you're saying. Or even more, and this gets into probably, I think it's probably a show that we've done before actually with Aisha, that you see these images on social media of children of all races and all backgrounds, and you see that we offer a wide range, and you go in and
It's
there's
not that.
absolutely no representation at the faculty level, no representation at the student level of what it is that you're putting out there. So that audit, that true audit, like you said, without judgment, of going, okay, I'm not walking the walk here. I'm talking, but I'm not walking the walk. I think is very, very important.
Well,
Um,
and to expand on that too, like it can feel very disjointed when, the owner of a studio may have one vision, but then the educators that work at the studio that are the ones kind of executing in the classroom and all the things, they're not on the same page. And so there's also that studio culture with the best of intentions could be A, but the educators are portraying B, C, D, E, and F over here, right? So that's important too, I think.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's an opportunity. Like, listen, cat herding is nobody's friend. And cat herding means one, trying to wrangle adults' schedules to meet each other. And then two, the other side of cat herding is like honest conversations with adults who we set in our ways and we have all our best intentions. And it's like what it is a business. And businesses, unless you have an intentionally like collective leadership model,
Yeah.
if it's my studio, and I'm not saying in this like, conceited way, but like, listen, I started the thing, I hired you, here's our mission, here's the contract. I'm noticing there's some incongruence. Then we've got to have a call into the mat, come into the floor and see if for the love of what the mission is, can we get some congruency?
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
it's not, that's when you walk, I believe maybe that's when you walk into a cat fight situation because there's a mission on the wall, but you have a lot of folks who've not actually bought into it and are not communicating what they're doing in their practice. And, sometimes, listen, and you've got to also, like, I know from experience, I've experienced, I feel like I was at a studio I love, but I noticed my teaching style. I noticed the way that I particularly thought about hip hop and street dance being represented in the studio wasn't necessarily in alignment with their bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I don't think everybody should be teaching this class.
Mm-hmm.
But y'all seem happy to let these people who don't train in this teach this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I can leave. And
Right.
that's fine.
Right. Exactly.
But that's me going to leadership and going, I recognize incongruence.
Right.
And that's just how Aisha rolls. If I realize it looked like a duck, but it smelled like peanut butter, I'm gonna talk to somebody about it.
Right. Exactly. This is not a duck. This isn't a duck, okay?
Peanut butter. It'll sugar.
So before we jump into the meat of the topic, I want to get a clear understanding of, because we're going to talk about hip hop programs. What do you consider a program? Because I think some people fail to think about the long game. Like when they're deciding if they want to offer a hip hop class, that should be the basis for eventually offering a hip hop program. Like
They are not the same. Class and program are not the same. Just because you have
program,
hip hop classes doesn't mean you have a hip hop program.
right? Exactly. Exactly. It doesn't mean the same thing. But I guess I want to hear your thoughts on encouraging people to understand that if you can't start where you can. If you can only offer a class right now, offer it in a way that it can be built upon in an authentic way. Is that something you would suggest, or would you say, okay, you have to build a whole curriculum and you have to be ready to throw the whole program in immediately, or would
Or
you,
don't do it.
or don't
Or
do
don't
it?
do it. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's this goes back to the honesty self-check, right? I think it's some hybrid of all of those things based on your honesty. So if you're going to lie because the money is good, then you're going to find yourself trying to say you have a hip hop program because you have enough paying customers to have 10 hip hop classes. That's not a program. That's, some divine synchronization of supply, demand that's only informed by revenue.
Money.
I am much more of the ilk that start where you start, but start on purpose when you have the capacity to start. So if you're a new studio, or maybe you're like a mid-year, not mid-career, but you've been around for a minute, and you're saying, maybe to have a hip hop class. That's only an idea. Don't start having the class just because you have an idea, because I think we have some people interested. So that to me is like, we have an idea and it might happen to meet a demand. What happens when that demand multiplies? Are you ready to have another class of the same level and then the next level? And do you have teachers for the next level? Or do you have relationships with other organizations, even other dance studios? And I know that is so unsexy. I know we actually sharing is caring, but we don't believe that when it comes to students. If you like, that's so it's kind of a both and E, none of the above. Like, if and I can speak to this. There was an organization that I had an idea. It's like, I'd like to teach a hip hop class here. And I did it. And while I was a part of that program, I did it. And then, I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to, not because anything was wrong with the program, but just life. I was like, okay, this is very seasonal and I'm going to be off traveling, whatever. And they're like, oh, but there's got such good demand. And do you think so-and-so could teach it? And I'm like, I mean, they were a good student, but they haven't really done the work. And they tried to bring in other people who could teach well, and it looked like they had done some training. But fundamentally, those folks were not people seeped into understanding the roots of the culture, the economic movement. So in that way, some part of me feels like, oh, maybe I should have just kept my good idea to myself, because I wasn't thinking about the capacity of this organization to sustain the very intentional, historically grounded curriculum that I developed and implemented.
Right. Exactly.
So if folks are looking for a quick answer, a quick fix, I don't have one. It might be like you have the capacity. But also, programming could mean we have a class and we don't have a teacher who can take on the next level, but we have the resources, we have the ingenuity to think about the resources that we do have to intentionally have these seasonal workshops while we're trying to figure out how we have a sustained future for that level. Constantly got to think creatively.
Right. I mean, what I hear and what I feel is start, like you said, on purpose. But if you don't have the intention of maintaining it with a level of integrity, then don't start. And if you start and you don't have the roadmap yet, figure out the ways that you make, different turns and make it work as best you can, but make it work with integrity is what I hear.
And also, like, start honestly. If you know what we have a capacity to do before we put this thing on as a sustained class that's always going to be offered, maybe for a season, for whatever reasons, you have somebody who's visiting in the area, or you have someone who's there, or you can have the resources to contract somebody for 6 weeks. Say, hey, we're one time only, we're doing this, because you're trying to use that as kind of like formative assessment or some type of just diagnostic onto like, okay, what would it take for us to keep this going? But then you're not also kind of putting yourself into a situation where you have to renege and put them books back if you play spades by saying, oh, we're starting this hip hop programming, and you really only had a dedicated person who could take that on. So like, just be honest, like, we're doing this exploratory one-time offering. But I think people, like, being honest, unfortunately, hasn't been the sexiest option for folks.
Right. Yeah, totally. It totally hasn't. And we'll get to that. That's a whole different show. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Aisha Upchurch about remixing your studio culture, and how hip hop programs can enrich your studio culture. If you want to catch this episode from the beginning, you can find it on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. Please share, please comment. We want to know what your thoughts are. But definitely share this episode because I've already gotten some great nuggets, and I think there are going to be even more great nuggets as we continue to talk with Aisha today. So, hip hop programs, along the same vein of what we were talking about, are often considered to be auxiliary. They're often isolated from the full curriculum, the program of a lot of studios. But there's some intersectionality between what people consider, and I don't even know if this is a distinction, you can talk about that, distinction considered to be classical forms of dance and hip hop, correct? That should be embraced. I feel like the intersectionality should be recognized and embraced. Do you believe that that's there?
I think every dance form has a history. So that's what makes them common. So I think we got into this a little bit in the previous episode. I learned ballet without learning the history of it, and I don't think that was correct. I think every form, every teacher should have to be able to teach about the historical evolution and context that inform these genres as part of your tandu, fondue, paddle kickball change, top rock, shuffle off the buffalo, boom, cat. Like they all have histories. None of them are accidental. They maybe all started with an idea, with riffing, with improv, but they all have histories, every single form. And I think what the lesson maybe from, with, or through hip hop culture is because it's such an umbrella. It is a thing, and then there's so many like different spokes on that umbrella. So what occurred for me in like dance studio land is offering something called a hip hop dance class can mean 5,000 different things. And so there's an opportunity to be specific and for the instructor in the studio to embrace that specificity where I'm like, oh, I'm actually teaching like popping. So radical idea, call the class popping. Because we're never actually going to do locking or breaking or like hip hop, like party dances. Then give your clients and that instructor actually the slack they need to do what actually they are doing, right?
This takes me back to the first conversation we ever had with you, where we were talking about particularly little kids hip hop classes, right? And how often you'll see it as like pre-jazz hip hop, or even like jazz funk, or hip hop 4 to 6 year olds. Like, is it really hip hop? Probably not. Like, call it what it is, right? That's what you said that years ago. Call it what it is.
Call it what it is. Like, yeah, I'm. Thank you for running my receipts. I'm consistent, right? And she
you are. I remember it stuck with me because I mean it's so true.
But like, even like, can you teach hip hop to 4 to 6 year olds? The answer is
absolutely not.
No, it's yes, absolutely.
You really? You think so?
Can you teach ballet to 4 to 6 year olds? Can you teach tap? Yeah. I'm saying things that I've my first foray into dancing, and I just did it. Like, I've been teaching for 23 years now. Like, my first jump was tap to 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I teach tap if I'm there to teach tap? Right. That doesn't mean I can't come in there and start with like some wing and pullback combo. And I can get 5-year-olds to that skills. It means my understanding of how to design a dance class that is developmentally appropriate, that represents the form, and allows for people to have fun means I teach a certain speed, I teach a certain way. So absolutely, you can teach 4 to 6-year-olds hip hop. You can teach them popping, you can teach them locking, you can teach them break. I know friends who have studios that are specific in that they are oriented around hip hop and street dance styles only. So under that, they can go, here's our popping program, here's our locking program, here's our house program, here's our breaking. And they have from what I call ankle biters. That's when people are so little and young, they closer to your ankles than your earlobes, to all the way to like, Big Mama Auntie now. So when you give yourself the leeway to be specific and understand that every single form has a rhyme, reason, a how, a technique, a oral, and now codified history, you can teach it, but teach it.
Teach it.
Don't teach what's the trending concept. Teach
Mhm.
it. Because then that student doesn't have to do the hard thing. And then here's what happens with studio culture versus like conservatory culture, right? Because then like conservatory, like specialized teachers feel like, or actually sometimes have to do a lot of facilitating and unlearning.
Mm.
Because sometimes in studio, what was trendy and cool and got money and got to have whatever label wasn't the thing. And so now there's resentment. I've experienced that resentment of local studios to other
Yes.
folks, so like just teach the thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or don't call it the thing. And that was your point. Like just call it whatever. Like if you're
Creative
like
movement, that's
yeah.
it's really what you're doing. Because I've done that. Listen, we are not doing any particular style. We're just trying to help other people move, not have no temper tantrum, not have
on our dot.
accident, like
dancing to some fun music
Right.
and
dance for 45 minutes. You do
We're
it.
staying on our dot and not asking to go to the bathroom. That's what we're doing today. That's what we're doing.
And if you're playing hip hop music while you're facilitating creative dance, you are still doing a creative movement class. You're not teaching hip hop. If I have classical music while I'm facilitating creative movement, I'm still teaching creative movement. I'm not teaching ballet.
Right. That is key, because I do think a lot of people go, "Oh, I'm just going to throw on this hip hop music and then now we have a hip hop class." And I also think, to your point about age levels and, can you teach little ones hip hop? You can do it. However, people fail to realize that there is a pedagogy that goes with
There's
hip-hop.
levels to this, man.
Right, exactly. You don't start here there, but I think that we realize that in ballet, we realize that in tap, and have not yet realized that in hip hop. And hopefully it is coming, hopefully, very soon. Um, I want to get to my next question though, because I think this is a very loaded one. We can just go ahead and drop it all. So right now, I've been seeing it, and I don't know why it's popping up more now. It's always been a question, but for some reason, right now, it's really hot on social media. Dance educators and social media world are challenging this long-standing narrative that ballet is the foundation of dance. And there are people, look at your eyes. There are people who are like,
feels about this.
They're bringing out the claws, and they're like, absolutely not. I know, I feel like that idea that ballet is the foundation of all dances is connected to the erasure of ethnic dance cultures that existed long before ballet.
Period.
And we could probably do a whole season on that. But what are your thoughts and your words to the people who are like, ballet is the foundation of all dance?
It's not. Historically, it's not. Factually, it is not. It literally is not. Do we need to do a lesson on ballet history, when it started, who started that? It was King Louis and the 14th and his obsession, dancing in heels at the court. 1700. You mean to tell me before 1700, nobody else on the planet was dancing? Factually, codified, not true.
Right.
But
So
I think
it's just actually not.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem, right? Is like you have one instructor that said that to their student, and those students get bigger or older, and then they start teaching and they say that because that's what they heard from their, like, there is no real like governing body or institution to really like provide the facts. And so we're leaving it up to all these individual instructors who pick and choose where they're getting their information. And that is getting spewed out to the next generation of dancers, and it just cycle and repeat, right? So
yeah, which is really, at this point, if we can just be real frank on a Friday, I love alliteration. There's literally no other way I can say this, and I mean to say this in a restorative, healing way, and if it is harmful, that is not my intent. At this point in 2123, if you are of a certain age or more, if you up with me in the 40s, if you in the 30s and you are still saying that, on a base level, you are lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ability to find and just easy, I'm just what I just did. Like it ballet, we talking 1700, like it is, you mean to tell me there were like that's just that's like very easily researchable. You don't need a degree. That's lazy right now with the amount of research tool that you have from Google. Even a funky Wikipedia page will show you, take you to some dance that happened before 1700.
Right. That's true.
So one, two, if you are still toting that, it is because you are so unfortunately paralyzed by the weight of colonizing powers erasure of
Mm-hmm.
dance histories, plural.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so paralyzing to you to let go of that thing that you then choose to perpetuate what is factually, obviously not true.
Right. Right. Do
And
you
so if you are scared to, if you are in that place where you feel paralyzed because it runs counter for everything that you were fed and you never knew until now that you could find another option, I say sit with the discomfort. That is actually a short roller coaster.
right.
Getting to truth is actually like that discomfort on that part of the road. Some parts of the roller coaster ride, like that anticipation, that click, click in that first drop. If that were the whole experience of a roller coaster, nobody would ever go on another one. That is actually the short. The ride is so much longer, and then you do find the enjoyment. So, click, click, click. The drop is gonna come, but then there's a lot that opens up if you realize
Mm-hmm.
there's a way to tell the stories and the histories and herstories of dance that don't have to privilege ballet,
Mm-hmm.
that don't have to privilege, it doesn't have to privilege hip hop. Can we tell people that dance is all dance is world dance? Because it always was happening all over the world. But we do have to be able to talk about the reality that a lot of the forms that we enjoy have been co-opted, erased, and whitewashed because of people's discomfort with letting non-white bodies show up in spaces and have their stories. So we got to talk about that. Like twerking ain't new. People been shaking their hips side to side with knees bent, and that is what physically gonna happen. If you bend your knees and shake them side to side, your butt's gonna move. That's a foundational movement in so many different indigenous cultures around the world that yes, predate the 1700s and the 1400s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was part of ritual celebratory dances.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've got to be able to understand how to tell the history of movement in a way that gives back people's lives and their stories. So I encourage folks, if I hit you and it felt unfair on a Friday, you're also welcome. There's an opportunity. There's so many, as many resources as you can find on TikTok to hold that lie. There are 50 more now opening up with Truth Avenues. So just
Mm-hmm.
the roller coaster. Get over the scary part. It's gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this next question, I'm going to be very careful how I ask this, and I'm going to preface it with it is not anyone's responsibility to teach you anything. And I also remember you saying that from the first episode is that it's it's not your responsibility to educate anybody, right? Like we all have the responsibility when we know better to go and do the work and figure it out and put in the research and put in the time. But is there a spot for those that really want to learn? Yes, you can find it anywhere, but what are those go-to resources that you recommend as like a jumping off point for getting a better idea, getting a better understanding of how hip hop dance ties into dance history
That are credible.
that are credible? Yeah. Thank
Well,
you.
one, I will say, like, the crazy thing about that statement is, like, here's my consistency yet evolution. I don't believe it is my response. I think here's what really needs to be expanded upon with that really quickly is you don't get to corner me to educate you so that you can stay comfortable in light of truth.
Mm-hmm.
That, no, nobody gets to do that. I am an educator professionally. I actually enjoy helping, facilitating people learn nuggets that lead to liberation, joy, and more expression. So I am one person who does workshops, who does PDs. There are organizations, there are other people who have written right now. So right now I'm thinking about Intangible Roots with Marcel Durden. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about Latasha Barnes and her amazing project, The Jazz Continuum. I'm thinking about Melanie George, who's been an amazing, not just dramaturg, but like archivist of jazz history, because we're talking about rooted dance forms and understanding hip hop in that lineage of Afro-diasporic rooted dance forms.
Mm-hmm.
So to talk about hip hop dance history, one is going to need to actually talk about jazz history, and jazz is undeniably black. And so folks have to first, get over that little roller coaster hump. But then you realize there are more resources, right? Rennie Harris has a university now. Folks can go and get some training, like specifically around street dance. I got to work with the Destiny Art Center and help edit their street dance curriculum guide, and it was a multi-year process where they reached out to OGs and legends in the street dance and hip hop culture to put together a manual that represents how and why they teach hip hop and street dance the way they do. So there are different organizations that are out there, and so yes, it may be daunting to be like, well, where do I click on the interwebs? That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think there are big dance conferences. I think about like IABD. Like, there's so many different type of dance conferences where folks can go. Pull up to a dance conference. Go and be like one of many. Don't ask a question. Just sit there and see what you learn, and then see if someone says something interesting. Can you follow up with them? That type of agency is what I want to say is not my responsibility to like pull out. If you can order off of Uber Eats,
You can do it.
You can find it.
Yeah,
True.
can't force the agency, but I don't mind when I'm in that professional role to help facilitate, like, people understand. I love teaching people about the roots of hip hop. I absolutely love it. But not on some like, hey sis, can you make me comfortable? Because I just learned that I ain't supposed to be doing this right. So I'm here for what you want to say. But honestly, I'm just going to keep saying things that keep me stuck in this place where I don't have to change. No, hard pass.
Yeah, and like, how can I do the least amount of work possible? Just tell me what I need to know, and I'll spit that back out, and we're good.
Right.
I check that box. Yeah, thank you, Aisha. So we're chatting today with Aisha Upchurch, and this is our second episode in her guest series. We're talking today about remixing studio culture. How can hip hop programs enrich dance education? Um, there's lots to unpack here, and Aisha's always doing a fantastic job at this. But Aisha, I want to go now to okay, so your top 3 ways that adding a hip hop program can enrich studio culture. What are those top 3 ways, and why is it beneficial for a studio to make sure they're thinking about that?
So I think kind of pre-step one is, again, back to our earlier question. After you've had an honest conversation with yourself and you're going, we want to do this intentionally because we have the resources in terms of the staff, and we're thinking long term on purpose. I think one benefit of an intentional hip hop program amongst a dance studio that's offering different styles is because hip hop has this very unique potency to appeal to people across every type of identity demographic, right? So that's an asset that, like, you potentially have the opportunity to transform your studio space into this place of multiple contact zones where folks can be around people who are different than them: age, gender, race, ethnicity, religious practice, size, on down the line, because hip hop can appeal to people.
Yeah.
So one, that's an asset, is that there's a potential to create an environment where all kinds of people can come and know that they get to be around all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Two, because hip hop is so multi-pronged, it invites an opportunity for a studio to think about the different type of movement, expressions, histories, styles, choices that now their students can choose or can experiment with. So in the big hip hop umbrella, like I was saying earlier, you might find that really you've got somebody who kind of do like freestyle. You've got somebody that can do popping and locking. You've just increase the amount of exposure to different movement aesthetics that your students can enjoy
Mm-hmm.
um, when you're being intentional and you have the capacity to do that. And the third way that I believe the hip hop dance can enrich a studio culture is because um, the beauty about hip hop dance, like it has a rhyme and a reason. And what's beautiful about hip hop, I would say, unlike a form like ballet, and this is not a ding, is that ballet really prizes everyone being able to kind of look and perform the same, which opens itself up to a lot of different type of discipline and training and joy and like being able to achieve that same point. With hip hop, there's steps and levels, but it requires that you find your own lane of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's an asset because it means you can have multiple teachers teaching the same class, but offering a different style and take, which is going to help the students then try to figure out their style, their
Mm-hmm.
individuality, which bleeds into, in a lovely way, who are you as a human? And how and why does this particular form seem so essential to you being able to express who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll get beyond looking at the cash cow of it, and thinking about these beautiful components of hip hop dance culture and what they could bring to a studio culture. It is really a beautiful opportunity for us to actually have an honest conversation about your capacity and intentions.
Right. Right. I want to go back to your first point real quick, Aisha, about the benefit being that people have the opportunity to be around people who are different from them. Do you think that people think that is an opportunity? Because there are a lot of people who feel like being around people who are different than them is not necessarily an opportunity, but a annoyance or a hindrance.
Yeah, there are some studies that say like actually having a diversified like staff makes getting to consensus harder.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that because definitely if you're just trying to get the needle to move to the next tick quicker, you want everybody who thinks it moves the same.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty that we miss, particularly around the beauty that, because the arts don't operate like a corporation, and thank God, the arts require so much individualized expression. It requires you to be able to listen to self around other people, taking information. And these are skills and assets that show up in so many different facets of life that regardless if someone sees it as an annoyance or a hindrance, it is always an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, I mean, listen, I get to travel the world and be with people that I don't share a language with because of hip hop. And that is not some pithy, PSA, save the world statement. That is my actual truth.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an asset because I now get a chance to understand the world beyond me. And I get a chance to learn a little bit about more about me when I'm in a world that is different than me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
and you don't even always know that it's an asset at the time. But it is always, I think it is always an opportunity, even if people can't see that in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, we have been chatting with Aisha Upchurch about remixing our studio culture, how hip hop programs can enrich your studio culture. We're nearing the end of the episode, which makes me really, really sad. But the good news is that you can get this entire episode from the beginning, all the way from the start on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. Please share it once you pull it, share it with everybody that you possibly can, and drop your comments. We want to know what you think, how you feel, what you heard, what were your aha moments. We want to know all of that. But now it's time for one of my favorite parts, and it's homework. And Aisha gives good homework, and you better do it because she's going to be back for another show, and she's going to ask you, did you do your homework?
Yeah. And so, Aisha,
Ask this.
yeah, and you know the drill, right? Like we want to talk now about what can everybody watching, what is the one thing that they can do to make an improvement and take baby steps to, to get to this enlightened place between now and next week. One step they can take. What is that for you?
Watch a documentary. There's so many. There's so many.
There are some really good
There's so
ones.
many on Hip Hop Dance now. So I would really encourage people to watch the documentary.
Any
Um,
favorite?
One of my favorites just about hip hop culture and also showing the ties to Latinx culture. I love showing my students from mambo to hip hop.
From what was the first part?
From mambo to hip hop, a South Bronx tale. That's one of my favorites because it just helps people kind of go, oh, there's a rhyme and a reason to how and why this whole thing started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Love
From
that.
Mambo
I mean,
and where that's available on streaming services, Aisha?
I think so. You know, I'm a little old school, so I don't know if you can see, but I do have like DVDs up there. I
You
still
still
own a
do
DVD.
no shame in that. I've got
I
them
would
too.
never endorse piracy, but I do happen to know that I have seen a copy of it on YouTube.
Okay. Awesome.
Nice. Okay.
Awesome.
So we also encourage you to take our STEPS initiative. This is a 5-part online module course that you can take. Every module has been curated by an expert in their field, from racism to gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition psychology, and of course, dance medicine and science. It was the catalyst for this series. We encourage you to take it. It is by no means everything you need to know, not even close. But it does lay a foundation and give you tools and resources to explore further on your own. So, and that is completely free. So that is available on our website, and Melissa is going to pop that link in the up right now. And Aisha, how can people get in touch with you? Because I know you do consulting, you do all kinds of workshops. So how can people get in touch?
Well, you know, shout out to my parents for naming me because there's no other Aisha Upchurch on the planet. So you can go to AishaUpchurch.com. On Instagram, I'm at Aisha Dances, AYSHA Dances. And those are usually the two most effective ways to reach me.
And what do you have coming up that you can share?
Ooh, I'm excited. So in one of the sandboxes, I'm a lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and every year we put on a hip hop conference, and we are gearing up for that. It's going to be a little bit of a block party, a little bit of a symposium, a little bit of a jam on April 28th and 29th. So that's what's coming next. So if people want to come up to Cambridge, Massachusetts and party with us, do it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And you're traveling. You're going to the Netherlands.
I'm going to the Netherlands. I am a site manager, was also an artist educator with this organization called Next Level USA, which sends 4 hip hop artists to different countries to do 2-week community programming on cultural exchange, conflict transformation, entrepreneurship, and hip hop arts. So I'm going to be going to Netherlands.
Yes.
Are you still consulting with studios and stuff?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Because I don't sleep. So I've got
What are you doing all day?
You got to fill the time with something. You might
I got minions. Right. No, listen, I actually, you know, for me, there's this beautiful quote, but the line for me between work and play is very blurred because I do feel a lot of joy in the work that I feel called to and allows me to play. Like I get paid to make things up, conferences up, classes up, programming up. I like to have joy. I like to dance. So work is play, play is work. And sometimes I do take time all the way off.
As you
Good
should.
for you, as you should.
Well,
And
I'm glad that you did not take time all the way off and you were able to join us for our show today. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It is another great show. Looking forward to our 3rd show, so everybody be on the lookout for that. Thank you to everyone who watched Aisha's last show and this show and all the seasons of Beyond the Steps. This is season number 3. Thank you to Bree for being with me for 3 seasons. Doing this work. It has been an absolute pleasure. This Beyond the Steps is becoming a podcast, so please, please, please be on the lookout for that coming soon. Now you can watch and or listen all at the same time. Our next show is going to be next week, Friday, 3:30 Eastern Time at Apollo Performance at TP Dance Creations on YouTube, and it's on the importance of prioritizing diversity and inclusivity in professional dance spaces. We're talking to Suzanne Purcell and Indira Cunningham from Confluence Dance Company. So that is a great episode, and I can't wait for you to see it. If you want to see any of our episodes, TP Dance Creations at Apollo Performance on YouTube, catch it and share it. And until next time, do your homework and continue your journey beyond the steps.